All right, gather around, my financially curious friends, because today we're talking about the rat race. You know, the endless cycle of working, spending, and somehow never getting ahead. And no, it's not because you're bad with money or because your boss secretly hates you. It's because the system has been designed to keep you stuck. From the moment you start working, you've been told the following: get a job, buy a house, take on debt, and keep spending until you retire, hopefully. But here's the thing, most people never actually escape. They work for 40 years, stress over bills every month, and retire with barely enough to survive. Meanwhile, the wealthy? Well, they're out here stacking assets, letting their money make more money, and reaching financial freedom decades earlier than any of us. But why? Because they play a completely different game. You see, most people think building wealth is about making more money. But it's not. It's about knowing how to use the money you already make. And today, I'm going to show you 5 of the biggest middle-class traps that are keeping people locked in the rat race, so you can actively start to avoid them, escape, and start building wealth. Let's get into it. Okay, let's get started with trap number 1, staying underpaid. Here's something that most people will probably never realize. Companies are almost always going to try to pay you as little as possible. Never what you're actually worth, just what they can get away with. Think about it. Have you ever noticed how companies, maybe even the ones that you work at, will suddenly find more money after you quit to hire someone new? Well, that's because they've had that money all along. They just chose not to pay you more. Almost every single middle-class worker falls into a comfort zone trap. They get a paycheck that covers all of their bills, and they just assume that that's what they're worth, or at least that's the best they can do. Then they wait around for that 3 or 4% raise that doesn't even beat inflation, while others around them that are job hopping get to make 10 or to 20% more with every single move. So if your paycheck hasn't changed in years, then I can pretty much guarantee that you're getting paid less now than before. And no, asking for a raise isn't greedy. It's literally just basic math. But unfortunately, that's the basic truth here. Most people just settle. They assume that their company will take care of them and that their loyalty will be rewarded, or maybe that they just don't deserve more. But that's not how the game works. It never has been. So what's the easiest way to escape from this trap? Start looking for other opportunities. Even if you actually like your job, applying elsewhere forces your employer to start to see your real market value. And if they aren't willing to pay you for what you're actually worth, well, someone else will be. Because staying loyal to a company that underpays you isn't loyalty. It's voluntary financial stagnation, staying stuck in the rat race. All right, making more money and having your real market value recognized is great. But there's another trap that catches most middle-class people, no matter what their income is. It's called lifestyle creep. Maybe you've heard me talk about it before, but it's a very real trap that seems to automatically affect those of the middle class. You get that raise at work that you stop feeling guilty about asking for? Great! Time to go house hunting for a bigger apartment. Got a hefty bonus? Time to upgrade that old car of yours. Another promotion? I guess you're going to the Caribbean this winter. And suddenly, before you know it, even though you actually have started to make more money, you feel just as broke. Here's a secret that no one really tells you. It's not about how much money you actually earn. It's about how much you can actually keep. You see, if every time you start to make a little more money, you start spending more, you're literally just running in place, almost like a hamster in a wheel. Unfortunately, this is exactly what most middle-class people end up doing. But rich people, they do the exact opposite. Instead of starting to spend more money, they invest more. That way, instead of upgrading their lifestyle, they upgrade their wealth. So what's the solution for this lifestyle creep trap? Well, next time you get a raise or start making a little extra cash, resist the urge to spend it, save it, invest it, use it to create more money, because that's the difference. The middle class buys liabilities, where the wealthy focus on buying freedom. All right, now let's talk about one of the biggest financial traps that the middle class end up falling into, relying on a singular paycheck. You see, if your job is your only source of income, you're basically walking on a financial tightrope with no safety net. Everything is fine until it isn't. Whether it's a layoff, a recession, company budget cuts, or an industry downturn, boom, your entire income can disappear overnight. And yet, this is exactly how the middle class lives, finding comfort in the fact that most people are often in the same boat, putting 100% of their financial security into a single paycheck. Every expense, every bill, every financial plan relies on that one direct deposit showing up every 2 weeks. It's not that they don't work hard. In fact, most middle-class workers grind harder than anyone else. Working overtime shifts, late nights, and taking on extra responsibilities, all of it just to make a living that isn't actually secure. Since no matter how hard they work, their income is still tied to one employer, one position, one paycheck. Meanwhile, the wealthy are playing an entirely different game. They never put all their eggs in one basket. Instead, they build up multiple streams of income so that if one dries up, they have others to keep the cash flowing. They invest in stocks, real estate, and businesses. They own assets that keep making them money even when they're not working. Their money works for them, not the other way around. And this is exactly why when a recession hits or layoffs start rolling in, the wealthy don't break a sweat over things like paying rent. They have backup income, passive income, and cash reserves. Meanwhile, the middle class is left scrambling. The scary part? Most people will never realize how risky this actually is. The dark truth is that companies don't provide you with lifetime income. They exist to make money themselves. So if cutting your position helps their bottom line, I promise they'll do it every time. So, how do you escape this trap? Well, you start by building a second income stream now before you need it. And no, I don't mean quit your job and start some hustle culture grind where you never sleep and survive off five-hour energy drinks every day. I mean creating income that doesn't depend entirely on your employer. Start with something small, a side hustle like freelancing, selling digital products, or renting out a room. Literally anything that gives you extra cash flow outside of your paycheck. You need some financial independence. Now, I want to talk to you about another thing that keeps people in the rat race for life, not investing and ignoring retirement. Most middle-class people think that investing is something reserved for rich people, or something that they'll figure out later. But then suddenly, they're in their 50s, stressed out about retirement because they barely have any savings. But why does this happen? Because no one teaches us this stuff. I mean, think about it. Schools don't teach us about it. Most parents hate to talk about it, and for decades, everybody just tells you to work hard and save money. Here's the problem, though. Saving alone will never make you wealthy. Let me run you through a quick example. Let's say you somehow manage to save $100,000 over your lifetime and just leave it in your bank account. Sounds pretty impressive, right? Well, thanks to inflation, that $100,000 will actually lose value every single year. In 30 years, it'll be worth a lot less than it is today. But if you invested that same $100,000, even in something simple like the S&P 500, which averages returns of 10% per year, that same money could turn into $1.7 million in that same 30 years. And that's the difference between working forever and retiring comfortably. And the craziest part, you don't need a ton of money to start investing. Even just $10 daily add up to hundreds of thousands over time. But the middle class keeps making the same excuses, like, I don't know how to invest, when in reality, you don't need to be an expert, you just need to start with index funds and set up automatic transfers. Or the old, I don't have enough money to invest excuse, which ignores the fact that the key is to start early, not with a lot. Then there's what I consider the worst excuse, I'll invest later. Because in reality, later just means less money. Think about it like this. A 25-year-old that invests $200 a month can retire with over $1 million, but a 40-year-old that does the same will end up with about $300,000. That's more than 3 times less money because you said later. And that's why the biggest mistake you can make is waiting. Because every year you put off investing, you lose out on compound growth. Let's talk about retirement for a second. You see, most people assume that Social Security or some pension will take care of them one day. But newsflash, that money is hardly ever enough. Most middle-class people will spend decades working just to hit retirement and realize they can barely afford to live. Some end up relying on their kids, while others keep on working till they're 70. But here's what wealthy people understand. Retirement isn't an age, it's a number. And if you can hit that number with the right investments, you can retire at 50 or whenever you want. The key is building wealth early so you have options later. So what's the fix for this trap? Start now. Even if it's just a little bit, start putting money into stocks, real estate, or retirement accounts like the 401k, because every dollar you invest today buys you freedom in the future. Okay, the last reason why the middle class gets stuck in this rat race is by spending money to look rich instead of actually being rich. Look, social media has completely scammed people into believing that wealth is all about luxury cars, designer clothes, first-class flights, and expensive trips. But here's the ugly truth. Most of the people who flex this wealth on Instagram are probably broke, drowning in car payments, maxing out credit cards, and stuck with insane mortgage payments just to look rich. Meanwhile, the people that are actually wealthy could care less about impressing people. Most of them drive pretty normal cars, wear regular clothes, or just invest their money into assets that make them richer. But middle-class people fall into this trap every day. The moment they start making more money, they feel the need to upgrade everything. They go and lease a luxury car, start renting a bigger condo, and start spending to impress. This is how people who make well over 6 figures end up still living paycheck to paycheck. They might look successful, but behind the scenes, they're stressed, over-leveraged, and trapped in the same rat race as everyone else. Here's what most people don't understand. Wealth isn't about what you wear, drive, or post on Instagram. It's about having control of your time, money, and future. I mean, think about it. Would you rather have a Lambo with a massive payment and no savings, or a Volvo with hundreds of thousands invested? Unfortunately, most people would rather choose option 1 because they crave status, approval, and attention. But the people who go with option 2, they actually do escape the rat race and probably end up buying one later when it actually makes financial sense for them. The rich don't get caught up proving their wealth because the investments do the talking for them. Because at the end of the day, your bank account matters more than your appearance. So if you're tired of living paycheck to paycheck, here's a simple rule. Stop buying things just to impress people who probably don't even care. Because the second you stop trying to look rich, you get a shot at actually becoming rich. Okay, let's bring this all together now. The middle class continues to stay stuck in the rat race. They keep on falling for the same traps that we've talked about today. They work hard, but stay underpaid because they don't realize the companies will literally pay them as little as possible. They feel the need to do things like spend more money every time they make a little more or just to impress others. They rely on one singular payment and they ignore things like investing and retirement. And now you know exactly why most people never escape the rat race. They spend decades working, following the traditional path, and believe that they're making progress only to reach their 50s and 60s and realize they're nowhere near financial freedom. The good news? Now that you know exactly how to escape the cycle, it doesn't require luck, a trust fund, or a six-figure salary. It requires making different financial decisions. But most importantly, it requires you to start today. Start small. Pick one change. Maybe you'll finally start investing, just $50 a month. Maybe you'll find a way to increase your income. Maybe you'll cut out that unnecessary spending that's keeping you broke. Because once you start making smart money moves, the rat race stops controlling you, and you start controlling your future. If you made it to the end of this video, like, subscribe, and let's start building real wealth.